Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Welcome to another podcast. I'm here on my own again. Um, to be honest with you, we've run out of time to record this podcast. So I am just doing it quickly on my own to get something out because I don't want to ruin the streak. I feel like if we don't do 1 week, then we'll be like, oh, it's okay. We've had a break before. And I don't want to do that because I want to be consistent and I really love doing the podcast. So I thought I'll just come on my own and just do one on my own. I can record it late and it doesn't matter. So yeah, I'm on my own. It's going to be a short and sweet one, but it's an interesting one. I'm going to say that. So roll the intro.
Hello and welcome to Confetti Conversations,
the podcast where me and my sister talk all things weddings, wedding planning, and married life.
Okay, so let me get my notes up. So I wanted to talk about today wedding traditions. Why should we have them? Is it necessary? I'm not going to talk about the history behind them because I don't know the history behind them. Maybe we'll do that another day. Maybe we'll do that with Hayley one day. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about sort of why we're breaking traditions, why people are now choosing to sort of make their own rules and do things their own ways rather than going for like the traditional route of, things are very much personalized. You can do whatever you like. You don't have to do those traditional people aren't wearing white necessarily. People are like walking themselves down the aisle, or people are seeing each other before the wedding and walking down the aisle together, like things like that. We don't do bouquet tosses so much anymore, garter tosses, things like that. So yeah, there's a whole range of things that we don't necessarily do anymore, but I guess I want to know why. So my wedding was quite traditional. I kept with a lot of traditions. I wore white. We didn't see each other the night before and the morning of the wedding. The first time we saw each other was at the end of the aisle. My dad walked me down the aisle. We did speeches after dinner. I guess the only sort of non-traditional thing we did was we had like a sharing, like food platters, I guess, if you like, instead of having like your traditional wedding breakfast, which would be like a meat and two veg kind of situation. And Hayley's the same. She didn't have a starter and she had pies, pie and mash. So yeah, I think that was probably the only non-traditional thing that we did was our food. Because like I did a first dance, we did the cake cutting, there was a lot of traditions that we stuck to, but there's a lot of people not sticking traditions anymore. And I guess I wanted to talk about like why a tradition feels so heavy. So I guess there's a lot of expectation. When I talked to my mom about my wedding, when I was initially planning my wedding, she would say a lot of things like, well, of course you're going to do this, and of course you're going to do that. And there is quite a lot of weight on traditional parts of weddings from family members who had those at their wedding. My mom had a very, very traditional wedding. Actually, she didn't even plan her wedding. My nan planned her wedding. And I think that was quite traditional back then as well, was that the mother of the bride would plan the wedding. And she got ready at home with her mom and her bridesmaids. And like, it was, yeah, there's a lot of things that she did that, she sort of said to me, well, are you going to, well, of course you're going to do this. Of course you're going to do that. And I did do a lot of it, yeah. But there are things that you think, well, maybe I didn't want to do. I didn't want to necessarily do those things. But there is a lot of pressure, I guess, from family. I'm going to say I guess a lot today. I don't know why, but I am. There is a lot of pressure from families to do things in a certain way. And you don't have to do things in that way at all. You can do things your own way. And I think the the best thing about weddings is making them personal and making it your it's all about you two as a couple. So it's all about making it about the pair of you. So I think it's lovely to, have these individual traditions that are just for you. Make your own traditions. Make it a new family tradition that, I loved I did the old wedding photos, and then Haley did that same thing as again. Like, just do things that are a little bit different. Make new traditions, That's the way that things change, is by making new things. Yeah, there's a lot of this is what is done, rather than this is what fits us as a couple. Some people, so for example, my sister-in-law, her and her now husband didn't want to spend the night apart. They wanted to be together the night before their wedding. So they chose to stay together the night before their wedding, and then they parted ways in the morning, and that's what they chose to do, and that's absolutely fine. Like, I completely understand that, because it's what you feel comfortable with. Me and Sam chose to be apart because we wanted to have that, sort of have that. And I really felt passionately about us being apart the night before. And I did really miss him the night before, and then the morning of the wedding, like, you want to text and say, how are you getting on? Are you okay? How's things going? But you don't, like, I very much refrained from that, because I wanted to have that time away, I guess. And then when you see each other at the end of the aisle, you're like, oh, how lovely it is. But I can also understand why people don't do that, and they do sort of do a first look. It's quite an intimate moment to see your partner again after sort of not seeing them for a few, for 24 hours or whatever it may be. Probably less than that, probably more like 12 hours. To like have that moment in front of all your friends and family if you don't like that sort of being in front of people thing, then it probably is quite intimidating, and it is probably quite nice for you to have that moment together, just the two of you. So I do get it. I do completely get why people do it. Yeah, we just chose to do that. But also, there's that fear that you're going to disappoint people, like, oh no, we're not doing this or we're not doing that. And people will be like, oh, I was expecting that kind of thing. But I guess modern weddings can be anything, and people can do whatever they like. So you kind of just have to stay strong on what you choose. If you choose to do something, you choose to do it. So stay strong on that, and be proud of what you've decided to do. And that's all you can do, really. You can't backtrack. If you've made a decision on something, you need to stick to it, because that I guess it's just really important that you're happy with your decision. I was happy with all of my decisions I made, whether I'd made, more traditional decisions, or whether I'd made not very many, but slightly more untraditional decisions. I was happy with all of the decisions I've made. So I felt like I had sort of an autonomy about my wedding, where I felt like it was really, I owned it, I did it, it was mine, it was how I wanted it to be, and it was perfect. So I think you just have to feel that way. So these are some popular traditions that couples are breaking. So the dress. People are not wearing white, and people are having like multiple wedding dresses, not just having that one dress. People are sort of having a daytime dress and an evening dress. People are also renting dresses now instead of buying them, or sort of re-wearing somebody else's dress, which I guess has always been around. But yeah, I think people have always done these things. People have always not worn white and had multiple dresses, and rented or re-wore dresses. Like, I think that's always happened, but those are sort of the breaks in the tradition that you can sort of use, I guess. Yeah. Walking down the aisle, I've already touched on this. So some people are choosing to walk alone, both partners walking in together, or being walked in by someone other than your parent. I mean, it's a choice. Some people aren't that close to their dad, for example, or their dad's not around, or there's somebody that it would be more sentimental for them to walk them down the aisle, a friend that's really close to them, or a sibling or something like that. There's also, like I said previously, doing a first look with your partner and then the pair of you walking down the aisle together. I do really love the idea of it. You've had that moment together. You've had some of your couple shots, and you've had that time to really absorb what's about to happen, and looking at each other and all that kind of stuff. And then you sort of go into this room filled with your favorite people, and you really feel like, we know. I'm annoying myself with saying, you really feel secure together, and you walk in hand down the aisle together. Like, I think it's a really a lovely thing to do. Again, I've touched on this before: bouquet and garter toss, skipping it entirely and donating flowers instead. I know that a lot of people are getting their flowers preserved, so getting them in resin and things like that. So you don't want to throw your flowers because you don't want them to get damaged. If you are preserving your flowers, this is a bit of a tip. Make sure that once you've put them down, they're in water, because if they're left on their side, they'll probably brown on the one side, and if they've not got any water. So yeah, if you really want to preserve your flowers, make sure that you have a designated vase for them, and that somebody is dedicated to take them and look after them, because it's very easy for them to sort of go walkabouts. Speeches and vows, private vows. I love that idea. Having that moment, just the two of you, or with your celebrant or whoever, and just sort of saying your vows to each other. Again, this works really well if you're not sort of confident in front of people. I think, you can have your traditional sort of ceremony, and then you can go and say your private vows to each other, and just have that moment where you sort of can be a little bit more intimate in what you're saying. No speeches. Yeah, lots of people are going for no speeches. The other thing with speeches is traditionally you would do your speeches after dinner, but this can be quite difficult for people who are nervous, because they might not enjoy the dinner as much. Like, I know at my wedding, my dad, to begin with, he was fine, but sort of towards the end of the meal, he started getting a little bit sort of, I don't want to say antsy, but just a little bit not himself. And I think it was because he was worried about his speech. Or I know it was because he was worried about his speech. So yeah, he would probably have preferred the speeches to be before dinner, but I really wanted dinner first because, well, I was hungry, to be honest with you. So yeah, I love the idea. Well, I loved the speeches, actually. I don't think I would ever go with no speeches, because I just I do love the speeches. I love the tradition of the speeches. But if it's not something that you want to do, don't do it. You don't need to do anything. Just because something's traditional, and just because something's done at a wedding, it doesn't mean you have to do it at your wedding. It's just what some people choose to do. But if you don't want to do it, you don't need to do it. It's absolutely fair enough. Okay, right. Non-traditional ceremony structures. So there's some different ways that you can do ceremonies. No bridal party. So I've seen this quite a lot, actually. People sort of not having bridesmaids or groomsmen. And I think it's up to you, really. I had 9 bridesmaids, which is not traditional at all. And I loved my bridesmaids, and I'm obviously grateful to every single one of them, and I wanted every single one of them there beside me on that day, and I would never change that. I just wish I had more time to speak to each of them individually the morning of, spend more time with them the morning of. I felt like the rest of the day I was happy with the sort of time shared between all of them, and I felt like I really got to be with them all during the day. But the morning of, I think because I was a little bit on edge, and they all needed to get themselves ready, I think it wasn't like the camaraderie. Whereas at my sister's wedding, there was 5 of us, and we were all together in one bedroom getting ready, and we all stayed in the house the day before, so we were all together, and it just felt a little bit more there was more camaraderie, and everybody was together. Whereas like my girls were sort of, because most of them were in like groups, and everybody was, everyone got on really well, and everybody was chatting to each other, but the groups had sort of split together, and I felt like everybody was sort of busy doing their own thing, which is completely fair enough. But I think had there been less people, maybe it would have been more together, if you know what I mean. So yeah. But I wanted 9 bridesmaids. I'm grateful for all of them, and I wouldn't change a thing of it. I loved every second of my day. I loved everything about them being there, and I would never change that. But yeah, it's just, if you're going to have 9, just think about, your timings and how long you're going to spend with each of them. So ceremony in the round, I have seen this before, and like catwalk ceremonies where it's like people are sort of either side facing inwards, and then there's like the couple are like in the middle, and everybody's like facing towards this like catwalk, I guess. So yeah, different ways of doing things. Short ceremonies, like 10 minutes, which, I mean, there was a point in my wedding, because ours was probably about 30 minutes long. There was a point in my wedding, and I was sat down, just me and Salmon. We were like, I think Vicar was doing a reading or something, or like doing part of the wedding. And I was like, I could just go home now and go to bed. Like, I don't need to carry on and do the party bit. And I think I felt that way because the ceremony is fairly long. And when you're stood up there, there's quite a lot to it. And it does feel quite long when you're in it. So yeah, I do like the idea of a shorter wedding. But then I think, like, do you rush things? Do you miss things? I don't really know how that would work. Friends officiating, there's a lot of that now. People are sort of doing the legal wedding in sort of like a courthouse kind of thing, and then having friends officiate their wedding, or having an officiant or something like that at their wedding, because it gives you a much broader scope of venues that you can go to, because not every venue, like most venues are licensed for you to get married, but some of them are only licensed in certain areas. Like, I think you have to have a structure or something. So if you wanted to get married outside, you might not be able to do that. But by having legal wedding before or after your actual wedding day, and then having a celebrant on the day, they can sort of officiate the wedding, if you like, or sort of, yeah, be a celebrant. So they can sort of lead the wedding ceremony, but it's not a legally binding ceremony, but it gives you that, well, personalization, I guess. It gives you the personalized feeling of it's being all about you. Like, if a friend is doing your wedding, they are the person that knows you better than anybody else, and they're going to be able to tell all the funny stories, and they might have been there when you met and things like that. I think it's really lovely having that, that really intimate sort of, I don't know what the word is, feeling to your wedding, because this person knows you so well, and it would sort of, I think it'd be quite emotional. So I do really love that idea. And it's happening a lot, really. Okay, so I guess with choosing to do things that are not traditional, you could have like fears that people are going to be like, well, that it's not going to be a proper wedding, or it's going to be a bit like, it's going to be different and all this kind of stuff. But I think at the end of the day, so long as your wedding is all about you and your partner, and you're both happy with what's happening, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It doesn't matter what your guests think at all. So long as you're both happy and you're both, enjoying yourselves, it doesn't matter whether you're having the most traditional day ever, or you're having this really sort of untraditional, super personalized, just beautiful day that's all about the pair of you. That at the end of the day is all that matters, is that you're both happy and your wedding is about you. So I guess you need to think when you're planning your wedding, what traditions matter to me? What traditions do I really, really want to do? Like for me, I guess, my dad walking me down the aisle was a non-negotiable. I would never have thought of anything but that. But I'm very close with my dad. I also loved the idea of getting married in a church. And I would have foregone the church wedding for the right venue. And I've said this before, like if the right venue came along and it was too far away from the church for it to be feasible for me to have a church wedding, I 100% would have had like a ceremony at a venue. But because we found the venue that we liked and it was close enough to the church, I was glad that I did that. But there were, again, like I said before, me and Sam not seeing each other the night before the wedding, that was a tradition that I really wanted to stick to. So there were certain traditions that I was like, no, we're definitely doing this. But there also were sort of other traditions, I guess. I was never going to do a bouquet toss. Like that was never ever in my sort of in my thoughts. I didn't have like a traditional wedding breakfast. I don't think there was anything else really. I think most of my wedding was quite traditional, but I think you kind of you just have to go with what's right for you. And not everybody is going to want to do all of the traditions, not everybody is going to want to have their weddings exactly the same, but that's what makes every wedding so incredible, because they're unique, they're personalized, they're about you. My wedding wouldn't suit anybody else because it's my wedding. And I wouldn't have anybody else's wedding because it's not my wedding. Like it is completely about yourself. But yeah, that's a kind of very short, very, very short and sweet episode talking about breaking traditions. I definitely would love to do an episode where we cover why we do certain traditions. So I'll look into that and I'll definitely get that one out at some point. And I'm sorry that this episode was so short and sweet and in some ways, I guess, rushed. But like I said before, I really wanted to get something out this week. I didn't want to miss out because we have never missed a podcast, and I would never, I wouldn't want to start missing now. We love doing it. It's just obviously logistically now, we have a little baby to sort of factor in. I'm recording this quite late at night, and if it wouldn't have worked for Hayley, because obviously the baby needs to go to bed. So yeah, you just have to do what works for you. But yeah, so I definitely wanted to get something out today, and I'm really glad that I have. I think it's really valuable sort of conversation talking about traditions, and like I said, definitely want to expand on it. So I'm going to write it in my notes now to have a look at it so that I can bring that podcast to you soon, and hopefully Hayley will be with me for that one as well. But anyway, for now, I'm Phillipa. This was Confetti Conversations, and I'll see you next time. Bye.